Emma was 16 when her beloved grandfather William passed away. The small cottage in Yorkshire felt empty without his gentle voice and warm smile. The house seemed to quiet now, without the sound of his morning tea kettle or his gentle humming. While he worked in his garden, Dot, as she helped her grandmother Margaret clean out his study, Emma moved slowly through the room that had been his favorite place. The wooden shelves were filled with gardening books and old newspapers. His reading glasses still sat on the small table beside his favorite chair. Everything smelled like his pipe tobacco and the lavender soap he always used. Emma opened drawer after drawer, carefully sorting through papers and old letters. Most of them were bills and receipts. Nothing very interesting. But when she reached the bottom drawer of his old wooden desk, her fingers found something unusual wrapped in what looked like very old tissue paper. The paper was yellow and soft. Like it had been there for many years, Emma carefully unwrapped it, and inside was a tarnished silver medal. It was heavier than she expected, and when she held it up to the afternoon light coming through the window, she could see words carved into the metal. Her grandmother Margaret was folding clothes nearby. When she looked over and saw what Emma was holding, Margaret dropped the shirt in her hands and gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. "I've never seen this before," Margaret whispered, her voice shaking. Her eyes filled with tears as she walked closer to get a better look. "Your grandfather never spoke about the war. Never once in all our years together." Emma studied the medal carefully, turning it over in her hands. It felt heavy, not just from the medal, but from something else she couldn't quite understand. This was from her grandfather's past, a part of his life that he had never shared with anyone. The quiet man who had taught her to bake fresh bread every Sunday morning and tend his small vegetable garden. Dan had kept this secret for over 60 years. Margaret sat down in William's old chair, looking confused and sad. In all our years of marriage, he never talked about what happened during the war. When I asked, he would just change the subject or find something else to do. I stopped asking after a while. Emma looked at the faded ribbon attached to the medal. Even though it was old, she could tell it had once been bright red, white, and blue. "Why would he hide something like this, Gran?" she asked, sitting on the small stool beside her grandmother's chair. Margaret shook her head slowly, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "I don't know, love. Your grandfather was always a private man about some things. He would rather talk about your schoolwork or his tomatoes than anything about himself." Emma remembered how her grandfather would always ask about her day when she visited. But when she asked about his younger years, he would smile and tell her stories about funny things that happened in the village instead. Now she understood that he had been avoiding something important. Maybe he was embarrassed about it, Emma suggested, though that didn't seem right. Her grandfather had never been embarrassed about anything. "No," Margaret said thoughtfully. "Your grandfather was proud of serving his country. But I think this medal meant something painful to him, something he couldn't talk about." That evening, Emma sat by her bedroom window, holding the medal in her hands. She had spread out all the old photographs of her grandfather on her desk. There he was as a young man in his army uniform, looking serious and handsome. There were pictures of him on his wedding day, laughing with Margaret, photos of him holding Emma's mother when she was a baby, pictures of him teaching Emma to fish when she was 7 years old. But looking at all these photographs, Emma realized she had never really known the young man in the uniform. She knew the grandfather who made her favorite cookies and told her bedtime stories. She knew the man who always had time to help with her homework and never missed her school plays. But she didn't know the soldier who had earned this medal. Emma held up the photograph of young William in his uniform and compared it to the medal in her other hand. What had happened to him during the war? Why had he hidden this award? What stories had he kept locked away in his heart? The medal felt warm in her palm now, as if it held all the secrets her grandfather had never shared. Emma knew that tomorrow she would begin looking for answers. She would find out what this medal meant and why the man she loved so much had kept it hidden away in a drawer as she got ready for bed. Emma placed the medal carefully on her nightstand. She realized she had so much to learn about the man she thought she knew completely. Her grandfather had been more than just the gentle, quiet person she remembered. He had lived a whole life before she was born, and some of that life had been important enough to earn him this medal, but painful enough to hide it away. The next morning, Emma woke up early with the medal still on her nightstand. She had dreamed about her grandfather all night, but in her dreams he was young and wearing his army uniform. She knew she needed to find out more about what the medal meant. After breakfast, Emma walked to the local library with determination in her step. The old stone building had been in the village for over 100 years, and Emma had spent many afternoons there doing homework. But today was different. Today she was looking for answers about her grandfather's secret past. The library was quiet when she arrived. Only a few elderly people sat reading newspapers in the comfortable chairs near the windows. Emma went straight to the front desk where Mrs. Patterson, the elderly librarian, was organizing returned books. Mrs. Patterson had worked at the library for 30 years. She was a small woman with grey hair and kind eyes behind her glasses. Emma had always liked her because she never made children feel silly for asking questions. "Good morning, Emma," Mrs. Patterson said with a smile. "What can I help you find today?" Emma pulled the medal from her pocket and showed it to her. "I found this in my grandfather's desk yesterday. I want to know what it means." Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened when she saw the medal. She put down the books she was holding and took her glasses off to clean them. "Oh my," she said softly. "That's a Distinguished Conduct Medal. They only gave those to soldiers who showed exceptional bravery in battle." Emma felt her heart start beating faster. Exceptional bravery. My grandfather. "Let me help you look this up," Mrs. Patterson said, leading Emma to the computer where they kept military records. They spent the next hour searching through old files and documents. Emma learned that the Distinguished Conduct Medal was one of the highest honors a soldier could receive for courage in combat. Mrs. Patterson remembered William well from when he used to visit the library every week. "Your grandfather was a hero during the war," she told Emma quietly, looking round to make sure no one else could hear. "He saved many lives in France, but he never wanted anyone to know about it." Emma stared at the computer screen, trying to understand what she was reading. Her quiet, gentle grandfather had been a war hero. The man who was afraid to kill spiders in the house had once been a soldier who saved people's lives. They searched through old newspaper archives and finally found what they were looking for. In a yellowed newspaper from 1944, there was a small article about Private William Thompson. The story was only a few sentences long, but it made Emma's hands shake as she read it. The article said that Private William Thompson had rescued 5 wounded soldiers who were trapped under heavy enemy. Why fire? He had crawled through dangerous ground 3 times to bring each man to safety. The newspaper called him a true hero of extraordinary courage and said he had risked his own life to save others. Emma read the article over and over again. This was her grandfather they were writing about. The same man who used to make her hot chocolate when she was sad and who always let her win at card games. That afternoon, Emma decided to visit Mr. Harris, an old man who lived down the street. From her grandmother, she had always known he was her grandfather's friend. They used to sit together on the bench outside the post office every Tuesday morning, talking and watching people walk by. But Emma never knew there was more to their friendship. Harris was working in his small garden when Emma knocked on his gate. He was a thin man with white hair and hands that shook a little when he moved, but his eyes were still sharp and kind. "Hello, Emma," he said, wiping dirt from his hands with an old towel. "How are you doing, dear? I was sorry to hear about William." Emma showed him the medal and told him what she had learned at the library. Mr. Harris's face changed when he saw it. He sat down heavily on his garden bench and was quiet for a long time. "I wondered if anyone would ever find that," he finally said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Your grandfather made me promise never to tell anyone about what happened during the war." Emma sat beside him on the bench. "You were there with him?" Mr. Harris nodded slowly. "William was the bravest man I ever knew," he said, his old voice getting stronger as he remembered. "When those soldiers got hurt and couldn't move, everyone else was too scared to help them. The enemy was shooting at anything that moved, but William didn't even think twice. He just started crawling toward them." Emma listened carefully as Mr. Harris told her the story. He ran into danger when everyone else ran away, made 3 trips to get all those boys to safety, got shot in the leg on the last trip. But he didn't stop until everyone was safe. Then, why did he hide the medal? Emma asked Dotmer. Harris was quiet again, staring at his hands. "After the war, your grandfather never wanted to talk about what happened. He used to say that the real heroes didn't come home. Said he didn't deserve any praise when so many good men died." Emma began to understand something important about her grandfather. He had carried the weight of survival when others had not. The medal wasn't hidden because he was ashamed of it, but because it reminded him of friends who never got to come home. When Emma returned home from visiting Mr. Harris, she felt like she needed to know even more about her grandfather's past. The stories she had heard made her see him in a completely different way. But she still had so many questions. Why had he been so sad about being called a hero? What had really happened to make him hide the medal? She went back to her grandfather's study and looked more carefully at everything this time. She noticed that some of the books on the shelf seemed to be pushed forward, like something was hidden behind them. Emma carefully moved several old gardening books and found a small wooden box that had been completely hidden from view. The box was plain and simple, made of dark wood that felt smooth from years of handling. When Emma opened it, she found a stack of letters tied together with a faded blue ribbon. The paper was old and yellow, and she could see her grandfather's careful handwriting on each page. Emma sat in his favorite chair and carefully untied the ribbon. As she began to read the first letter, she realized these were letters her grandfather had written, but never sent to anyone. They were like a diary, but written as if he was talking to someone. The first letter was dated just after the war ended. Emma read it slowly, and tears began to fill her eyes as she understood the pain her grandfather had been carrying. "I don't deserve this medal," one letter read in her grandfather's neat handwriting. "Tommy died saving me when I should have been the one to help him first. Robert never made it home to see his little girl grow up. Why should I be called a hero when they are gone forever?" Emma read letter after letter, each one filled with the same sadness and guilt. Her grandfather wrote about dreams where he saw his fallen friends. He wrote about feeling ashamed to be alive when better men had died. He wrote about not understanding why he had survived when others had not. In one letter, he wrote, "Every time I look at that medal, I see Tommy's face. I see Robert calling for his daughter with his last breath. How can people call me brave when I couldn't save the people who mattered most?" Emma wiped her eyes and continued reading. Through these letters, she discovered that her grandfather had struggled with deep sadness after the war. He had nightmares and felt guilty for being alive. But as she read the later letters, she noticed something changing in his words. The letters from a few years after the war were different. Instead of just writing about his sadness, her grandfather began writing about trying to do something good with his life. He wrote about wanting to help other people because he couldn't help his friends who had died. Emma heard her grandmother Margaret coming up the stairs, so she called for her to come into the study. When Margaret saw the letters in Emma's hands, she sat down quietly in the chair across from her. "I found these hidden behind the books, Gran," Emma said. "Grandpa wrote them, but never sent them to anyone." Margaret nodded sadly. "I always wondered where. He went when he needed to think. Sometimes I would find him in here writing, but he never told me what he was writing about." Emma showed her some of the letters, and Margaret read them with tears in her eyes. "I knew he was struggling after the war," she said softly, "but I never knew how much pain he was carrying inside." Margaret got up and went to a cabinet where she kept old photograph albums. She pulled out several books that Emma had never seen before and brought them back to the chair. "I think it's time I showed you some things about your grandfather that I've never shared with anyone," Margaret said, opening the first album. "Your grandfather spent every Saturday helping at the homeless shelter in the next town over. He never missed a Saturday for 20 years. Emma looked at photographs of her grandfather serving food to people and helping children with their homework at the shelter. In every picture, he was smiling and looked genuinely happy. He tutored struggling students for free." Margaret continued, turning the pages to show more photographs. "He helped dozens of children learn to read better. He never wanted anyone to pay him or even thank him publicly." Margaret showed Emma a newspaper clipping about the Johnson family, who had lost their home in a terrible fire. "When this happened, your grandfather quietly paid for their hotel room for 2 months until they could find a new place to live. The Johnsons never knew it was him who helped them." Emma stared at all the photographs and newspaper clippings. Her grandfather had helped so many people, but he had never told her or anyone else about it. He had never wanted credit for any of the good things he did. "He used to tell me that helping others was the only thing that made him feel better about surviving the war," Margaret explained. "He said that every person he helped was a way of honoring his friends who couldn't help anyone anymore." Emma realized something important as she looked through all these pictures and read her grandfather's letters. He had found healing through helping others. He had turned his pain into purpose, his survival guilt into service to his community. The medal in the drawer represented his past and the sadness he carried, but his daily kindness to everyone round him represented his true character and the man he had chosen to become. He used to say that the best way to honor the fallen was to live a life worth their sacrifice, Margaret added softly, closing the photo album. Inspired by everything she had learned about her grandfather, Emma decided she wanted to follow in his footsteps. The next Saturday morning, she walked to the local community center where William had spent so many hours volunteering. The building was old but well kept, with bright yellow paint and flowers planted round the entrance. Emma felt nervous as she pushed open the heavy front door. She had never volunteered anywhere before, and she wasn't sure what she was supposed to do. The inside of the center was busy with people of all ages. Children were playing games in one corner. Elderly people were sitting at tables talking, and volunteers were helping serve breakfast. A kind woman named Mrs. Cooper ran the center. When Emma explained who she was and why she had come, Mrs. Cooper's face lit up with recognition. "You're William's granddaughter," she said, giving Emma a warm hug. "Your grandfather was like family to us here. We all miss him terribly." Mrs. Cooper introduced Emma to many of the people who visited the center regularly. Emma met families her grandfather had helped, students he had tutored, and elderly people he had visited when they were lonely. Each person had a story about how William had made their life better. A young man about Emma's age was helping children with their reading in the corner. Mrs. Cooper brought him over to meet Emma. His name was David, and he had kind eyes and a friendly smile. "Your grandfather changed my life," David told Emma, his voice full of gratitude. "When I was 12, I was failing school badly and getting into trouble with the wrong crowd. Everyone had given up on me, including my teachers," David explained. How William had started tutoring him every Tuesday and Thursday after school. "He never made me feel stupid, even when I couldn't read simple words. He was patient and encouraging. He told me I was smart and that I just needed someone to believe in me." Emma listened carefully as David continued his story. "Your grandfather didn't just help me with reading and math. He talked to me about making good choices and staying away from trouble. He showed me that there were adults who cared about what happened to me." "What are you doing now?" Emma asked. David smiled proudly. "I'm studying to be a teacher because of him. I want to help struggling kids the same way your grandfather helped me. He showed me that one person who cares can change everything for a child." Emma felt her heart swell with pride as she heard story after story about her grandfather's kindness. An elderly woman named Rose told her how William had visited her every week after her husband died, bringing her groceries and staying to have tea and conversation. A single mother named Linda explained how William had quietly paid for her son's school supplies when she couldn't afford them. Emma started volunteering at the center every Saturday, just like her grandfather had done. She helped serve breakfast, played games with the children, and listened to the elderly people tell stories about their lives every week. She learned something new about the impact her grandfather had made at school. Emma was so inspired by what she had discovered that she decided to start a small project. She called it Hidden Heroes, and she wanted to share stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things in their community. Emma asked her classmates to look for quiet heroes in their own families and neighborhoods. Her grandfather's story was the first one she shared with the class. Emma stood up in front of everyone and told them about the medal hidden in the drawer and all the ways William had helped people without wanting recognition. She showed them photographs from the community center and read some of the thank you letters people had written about her grandfather. Her classmates were amazed by the story. Many of them said they had never really thought about the quiet heroes in their own families. Emma's project inspired other students to look more carefully at the adults in their lives who might be doing good things without talking about it. One student discovered that her mother had been secretly paying for an elderly neighbor's medications for years. Another found out that his father had been coaching Little League baseball for free every summer since he was a teenager. A girl named Lucy learned that her aunt had been knitting blankets for babies in the hospital for over 10 years. As Emma collected all these stories, she began to understand something important about heroism. Her grandfather's real medal wasn't the one hidden in the drawer. It was the love and respect of everyone whose life he had touched. He had chosen to be a hero not in one moment of war, but in thousands of moments of peace. Every Saturday at the community center, every Tuesday tutoring session, every quiet act of kindness had been like earning that medal over and over again. Her grandfather had understood that real heroism wasn't about getting credit or recognition. It was about making other people's lives better, one person at a time. Emma felt proud and sad at the same time. She was proud of who her grandfather was and amazed by all the good he had done. But she was also sad that she was only discovering his true greatness after he was gone. She wished she could have told him how much she admired what he had done. Still, his example was showing her exactly how to live her own life, and realized that every act of kindness, no matter how small, could make a real difference in someone's life. She didn't need to wait until she was older or more important to start helping others. 3 months had passed since Emma first found the medal in her grandfather's desk drawer. In that time, her life had changed in ways she never expected. The Hidden Heroes project at school had grown bigger than she had imagined, and her teacher had asked her to share her grandfather's complete story at a special school assembly. Emma stood backstage in the school auditorium, holding the tarnished medal in her hands. Her heart was beating fast, but she felt ready to tell everyone about the amazing man her grandfather had been. The auditorium was full of students, teachers, and parents who had come to hear about the hidden heroes in their community. When her name was called, Emma walked across the stage with confidence. She looked out at all the faces staring back at her and took a deep breath. In the front row, she could see her grandmother Margaret smiling at her with encouragement. Emma held up her grandfather's medal so everyone could see it. "This belonged to my grandfather, William Thompson," she began, her voice strong and clear. "For over 60 years, he kept it hidden in a desk drawer because he thought he didn't deserve it." She told the complete story of her grandfather's life, starting with how she had found the medal and ending with everything she had learned about his years of quiet service. Emma explained how he had been a war hero who saved 5 soldiers' lives, but how he had struggled with sadness and guilt after the war. "My grandfather hid this medal because he thought he didn't deserve it," Emma continued, holding it up higher. "He believed the real heroes were the friends who didn't come home from the war. But I learned something important over these past few months." Emma paused and looked round the auditorium. Everyone was listening carefully to every word she said. "True heroism isn't about medals or recognition. It's about choosing to help others, even when no one is watching. It's about making the world a little better every single day." She told them about the community center where her grandfather had volunteered every Saturday for 20 years. She talked about David, the young man who became a teacher because of her grandfather's belief in him. She shared stories about all the families he had helped, the students he had tutored, and the elderly people he had visited. "My grandfather earned his real medal not in one moment during the war," Emma said, "but in thousands of moments of kindness throughout his life. Every time he helped someone, he was being a hero." The audience was completely quiet as Emma finished her speech. She had decided to donate the military medal to the local museum so other people could learn about her grandfather's war service. But she explained that she was keeping something much more valuable, the lessons her grandfather had taught her about how to live. After the assembly, many people came up to Emma to tell her how much her story had meant to them. Some students said they wanted to start volunteering too. Several parents told her about their own family members who had done quiet acts of service without recognition. Emma began volunteering regularly after that, following in William's footsteps in every way she could. Every Tuesday and Thursday after school, she tutored younger students who were struggling with reading and math. She helped at the food bank on Saturday mornings, sorting donations and helping families pick out groceries on Sunday afternoons. Emma visited elderly people at the local nursing home. She would read to them, play card games, and simply sit and listen to their stories. Many of them reminded her of her grandfather, and she loved hearing about their lives and experiences. Each act of service made Emma feel closer to her grandfather. When she was helping a child learn to read, she could almost hear William's patient voice encouraging her. When she was visiting with elderly people, she remembered how gently he had always spoken to older neighbors and how much time he had spent listening to them. Margaret watched her granddaughter's transformation with tears of joy. Emma had grown from a sad, confused teenager into a young woman with purpose and compassion. One evening as they sat together looking through old photographs, Margaret put her arm round Emma. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you," Margaret whispered, wiping away happy tears. "You've learned the most important lesson he ever tried to teach, that the best way to live is to help others." Emma smiled and looked up at the darkening sky outside her grandmother's window. She thought about her grandfather and hoped that somehow, wherever he was, he knew that his secret had been discovered and that his example was still making a difference. She knew now that the greatest medal anyone could earn wasn't made of metal, or given by governments. It was made of love, kindness, and the positive difference you make in the world. It was earned by choosing to care about others, by helping when no one was looking, and by living each day with purpose and compassion. Her grandfather had shown her that heroism isn't about one moment of courage in battle. It's about a lifetime of caring for others, of choosing kindness over selfishness, and of making the world better in small but important ways. Em looked at her grandmother and smiled. "I understand now, Gran. The real medal was never hidden in that drawer. It was in his heart all along." The end.